Hi there, this is Scott. Welcome to Scott Stuff on the Road. I'm in Lansing, Michigan at the Meaningful Play Conference. And I've been through the first full day of the conference. And there was something kind of interesting I wanted to bring to the attention of those of you out there that like board games. So a lot of the talks at the conference have been about serious games and electronic serious games. So computer games and video games. Not a lot of focus on board games. And I'm doing a talk later on the history of library and gaming. And a lot of that's going to be talking about tabletop type games. But it's been interesting to learn about how computer scientists, game designers, these sort of folks look at computer games. And so I'm learning some new language and things like that, so I can talk about an art game with the best of them. But I wanted to bring you a few minutes from a talk. So I was in this talk where they're talking about the idea of feedback loops. And the scholar was Joris Doormans from Amsterdam. And he was talking about mapping feedback loops, so positive and negative feedback loops in games. And he puts up a picture of Power Grid and says, does anyone know about this game? And I'm like, me, I do. And so he then talked about Power Grid and feedback loops. And it was a very interesting way of looking at game design and board game design. And it got me thinking quite a bit. And so I recorded a few minutes of his talk. I asked him afterwards if I could put this on my blog, and he said that I could. I'll give you a link to his site at the end of this. The audio is not that great, but it's just because I'm taking it just with a little flip cam. But, you know, it'll still give you some idea of what he talked about. So, with that, take it away, Joris.
In the games that if you go ahead, you will be put in all kinds of disadvantaged situations because the turn order will be changed. And so actually buying more better plans helps you directly because this engine will become more efficient. But indirectly gives you negative feedback as well. Same goes for building more cities. It will give you both positive and negative feedback. And I've even simplified it further to just come to a few. If you just look at the feedback structure within the game, it's quite interesting. There's a feedback loop here, there's two dual feedback loops here. And if you can come to different patterns that think, well, these are sort of elementary patterns that you can distill from this game that are actually successful in this game. I don't know how much time I have, but just a couple of examples. It took Risk, and so you see there's a probably more familiar game. The Risk resolved around a feedback loop where you can build, which is a very safe option, or you can try to attack, and then you might have a chance to gain more cards and to improve your situation on the board, which is just positive feedback. But you can also lose, so you have an option between a relative safe but not very strong positive feedback, or an uncertain feedback in another place. So the sort of basic structure for a gamble is what drives Risk. Settlers of Catan, that's sort of pretty familiar. I think if you look at it, it's not very complicated. It's not, this feedback structure is not as delicate as Power Grid, because I think that's one of the strongest points of Power Grid. It sets up a very delicate, interesting feedback structure within just a couple of rules. But basically, it has an uncertain feedback loop where there's a considerable chance factor in what dice you roll. But it's sort of the chance factor is sort of down because you trade cards. You can, if you trade smart, you can sort of prepare for less times. And a final example, Boulder Dash. It's quite hard to set up a real complete diagram with a feedback structure as here. But the thing with Boulder Dash, it's a very interesting and emerging game, I think, is that you at least have all these small active elements, and how they are connected depends very much on the level design. But there is plenty of possibility and opportunity for feedback to occur between the different boulder formations and the diamonds and the things that fall the player and I think if you sort of similar scheme would go for many Zelda games as well. I think if you just look at that would be very interesting.
So, what'd you think? I thought it was interesting, the concept of mapping a game's feedback loops and looking at different types of feedback loops, positive and negative combos, and trying to make sure they're balanced. It's an interesting way to think about game balance. And what happens when you have a board game that hides too many of its feedback loops? Does it get to be frustrating? Container, for example, has a lot of feedback loops, but they're also hard to suss out, and maybe that's why some people find it to be frustrating. Anyway, I've got a few more days of this conference, and if I find something else that might be interesting to those of you out there, I'll pass it along. So until next time, that's it for Scott Stuff. Bye-bye.